Welcome to pop.0 with Brian Chaffin and John Keith.
Today is Thursday, April 27th, 2017, and this is a video podcast for the Mac Observer. I'm Brian Chaffin, editor-in-chief for TMO, and that's such a nice, prim and proper intro. I love it.
And you are both prim and proper today. And today, I'd like to announce that I am on a OCD happy part of the spectrum.
Oh, nice. Congratulations.
Based on your good and sage advice on getting the Logitech Brio, I have taken it to task for being available in only black when all my hardware needs
goodness
to be silver.
Gracious. It's like a catastrophe.
It is. I'm glad your OCD is in full agreement with my OCD about this.
Absolutely, of course.
So again, based on your sage advice, I got some Rust-Oleum spray, and I just sprayed the living crap out of the camera.
To be fair, that wasn't sage advice. That was mocking fun. But go ahead, please. Let me.
I like taking sage and ironic advice. I find that there's many layers to that onion of benefit. And pro tip: some of you may get a Brio and assume that plastic that's over the front protects it and acts as a natural mask. You should know that in the infinite genius of Logitech, they decided to protect with plastic the front of the camera in every part except the camera lens. So it was awesome. I sprayed I literally sprayed right over the camera lens itself and the sensor.
I gotta come to Logitech's defense a little bit from the standpoint of, I don't think they were expecting anyone to spray paint it.
I hear you, but to not come to their defense at all, and in fact attack them for a stupid decision on that, it seems to me that protecting the front of it, the most important area to protect would be the part with the sensor right behind it. If any part you were to guess would be covered by some protective thing for shipment, you would think that's probably the most important part to do.
Wait, are you talking about the film that it shipped with?
Yeah.
The film had holes where the lenses were?
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. Huh. So of course I literally sprayed silver right on top of it, which was
yeah. Did it come off? I take it came off because I'm looking at you.
Well, you're looking through it, yeah. So success. It's a little bit of alcohol and a Q-tip did wonders there.
So that's good stuff, John. I'm glad to see that your OCD is firmly in charge. That's
I'm in a happy place.
That's good. That's good
because as I'm looking at you and I see the camera and it's shiny, horribly applied silver paint on top of it that any person with any self-respect would be embarrassed to have. Yet still a win for OCD overall. So
because it's silver.
There you are. Correct. And that's what counts.
Check.
So with that insight into my part of the many psychological problems that I have, we have three topics which we're lying about, but three for today. And they are products and or companies Apple should buy.
Okay. I like it.
Influential non-Apple products, kind of what's in vogue today that they're not doing, and should Apple do anything about it?
Yes.
Kind of dovetailing maybe a topic 2.5, because I think I know what both of our answers are going to be on this, but there's a rumor that came out, I think 9 to 5 put it out, or maybe reporting on one of the analysts out there, that there is a rumored Apple Amazon Echo competitor that may be coming out.
Excellent.
And the super secret, not third topic that we might get into is a little viewer mail, depending upon how the time goes.
I think you got the viewer mail that I forwarded to you.
Yes, we got two interesting ones that we could probably machine gun through.
Excellent.
All right. Topic number 1, Apple, please buy these. So I've got a list for a long time that I wish that they'd bought, and I still wish they would buy of companies. Let's see if you agree or disagree with any of these.
All right.
But the top ones, and we can go in each one to say why, for me are DuckDuckGo, TiVo, and Tesla.
Okay.
Do you have any, or do you agree or disagree with any of those off the top?
These are going to be discussions. So let's go with these.
Okay.
And I mean, because I'd throw in Twitter, I'd throw in Instagram, I'd throw in
interesting.
Several things like that, because I want someone who's dedicated to my privacy to be in charge of them. But the 3 that you named are going to engender plenty of discussion. So let's go with those. So
DuckDuckGo, I hate their search results. I'll be honest with you. I've tried them several times. I want to love the company because they're certainly more privacy minded than Google is,
sure,
or Microsoft is with their Bing. But the search results are always just very meh. That said, the search results are very meh because it's a small company, right? And they don't have a ton of resources on it. But as far as I know, it's the only search engine out there that's kind of viable and independent. And Apple really, in my opinion, needs a search engine. They're constantly leveraged by relying on other people's searches, and kind of the principle of Steve Jobs wanting to own the whole widget and every part of its make. There's a lot of value to them having it because they could run it truly maintaining privacy. Not to mention they might kill Google's stock price by like half overnight if they were to do this, because it would be such a threat, and it would force, I don't want to see just harm on Google just for the heck of it, because Google, there's a cadre of products out there where I love the products, but I don't like the company or parts of the company and what they do. So Google, Amazon, Uber are all examples of that. I love Google. Yeah, they do such great search results. They do, and they've done kind of morally the right thing on a couple of occasions. I'm still really think they deserve a lot of kudos for pulling out of China, which could have been no little thing, because China just wanted horrible, privacy invading stuff there, and they deserve a lot of credit for that. But then again, they do a ton of scummy things where echoing you, where we're the product, and they just analyze and do bad things with regard to maintaining our privacy or not maintaining our privacy at times. So they're a company who I love and at the same time have problems with. Amazon is that way too. I mean, the service is mind-boggling. After you experience how well they do a million things, just like even a return. I used to remember when I returned products and going through the RMA process and the 50 emails and the phone calls to the electronics company. They've made it basically a one-click thing where you get where you don't even have to slap a label on this thing. You just basically bring it downstairs for me to my doorman, and UPS picks it up, and I get a credit a couple of days later. It's amazing how much of the purchasing process they've made simpler.
We're going off on
better.
A tremendous rabbit hole here. I mean, your point is that there are companies out there that you like part of what they do, but then you loathe part of what they do. Right.
And Uber's got obviously a lot of issues, yet the service is kind of phenomenal. And Google is one of these things. And if there was a real competitor, and I got to give credit to Microsoft because they're trying with Bing, although they have their own privacy. I mean, Windows 10 is a privacy nightmare if you care about it. It would be fantastic for the industry. And Apple could really do some good there. And
Apple could also Internet Explorer Google by offering the service for free without ads.
Right. Or, what I'd like? I don't mind ads. I mind bad and intrusive and horrible, scummy ads. So if they did a kinder, gentler ad, a lot of Google's ads, by the way, I have no problem with. I love AdSense ads that are They're off on the side. They're very small. They try to be somewhat relevant, and they're not like popping up like a Jack Russell Terrier in my face. So some of the stuff they do is great, but Apple could take that a bit further, make it maybe a little bit more refined, make it even less.
Apple could offer ads based on the search you just did as opposed to your profile.
Right. Or maybe
by not tracking a profile, and that, boom, you've got targeted ads and you've got no surveillance capitalism.
Yeah. And maybe they could even try to innovate, because there is a spectrum of wants here where I might be okay with a certain amount of tracking, but let me have that control. Let me have a slider that says never track anything I ever do, ever.
Or let me pay for the service and don't track me. I'd be fine with that. If Google let us pay to use all of Google services without having them rummage through our lives, sign me up.
So the point is that they could force some innovation. And another big thing, frankly, it would help their artificial intelligence work. I know that they say they don't need to invade your privacy.
I totally agree with that.
But on the other hand, seeing a bajillion searches and how people are interacting with that and seeing how it works under the cover, even if you don't invade all those folks' privacy, you can still do a lot more artificial intelligence stuff. So it would just help them. Not to mention, let's be a bit candid. I think that basically Apple sucks at online services by and large. There may be an exception or two, but if they got into the search engine thing, they'd have to get serious. They'd have to have a team that ups their game in that regard, and that would be a good thing for basically all Apple products. And there's just so many integrations that they could do with that. So, and it would really be earth shaking to the entire technology world if Apple got into this, and they could basically pick up DuckDuckGo for pennies relative to Apple's market cap.
First of all, I agree with almost everything, if not everything, that you just said about why it would benefit, why I would like to see Apple do it. So just, ditto. I'll be a total ditto head on that. But I don't know that Apple needs to buy DuckDuckGo to do this. I am actually fairly confident that Apple has a nascent search engine in a lab somewhere, and that they've been crawling the web for a long time. So, I think that they could probably just push out what they've got, and I would be happy. But if they had to buy DuckDuckGo to start something, well, then do it.
Well, where I disagree with you is just based on what I said before. Apple's got a proven track record of sucking on doing online stuff, and the folks at DuckDuckGo have been running a real search engine for years and years and years. So even if they use none of the infrastructure and they only used the lessons learned from DuckDuckGo to make a 2.0 or 10.0 new tech thing, the folks that run it are going to bring a lot to the table that Apple can't possibly understand in running just a demo thing internally, right? Because it's all about scale. And one thing we've seen is Apple has a lot of problems with scaling, and particularly online scaling. So I would think that considering the market cap of DuckDuckGo, although I think it's private, but it's got to be almost next to nothing for Apple. So just buying the talent alone would be a bargain. It's one of these, as soon as someone else wakes up, and it might be Microsoft or someone, just to take it off the table, it will be an instant regret, I think, for Apple not to have done it, because it's such cheap money to get it, and if only to have it as a hedge against. That way no one can strong arm you. Microsoft can't strong arm you. Google can't strong arm you. You have some basic infrastructure that is necessary for a lot of their products to work well, and you could just keep refining it. So, and
you didn't specify, you implied it and hinted at it, but you didn't specify the fact that Siri could be, the data from a search engine would certainly apply to making Siri better.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, you're absolutely right to make it more fine pointed in that regard. That's what I meant by artificial intelligence stuff. I just kind of put it all under the umbrella of Siri. But yes, all those services could be better. It's one of those things that astounded me.
I'm not convinced they have to buy it, but if they need to make this happen, yes. Yes.
Well, okay. So that was a very uncontroversial. We're in full agreement. Once again, their biggest problem and fault, Brian, is that they haven't hired us, right? Clearly.
Clearly.
To right that ship.
Yeah.
Okay. So next is is TiVo. TiVo needs to be bought, although I think Roxio or some other company bought them, but whatever, you buy that holding company, which also has a market cap of basically nothing for Apple to take. And
I think Roxio
Apple's
TiVo. Oh my goodness, Rovi owns
Rovi. I'm sorry, Rovi. Rox. It's another, basically a meaningless, some kind of media company that bought it and is running it into the ground.
That was in June 2016. They bought it for peanuts. It looks like $1 billion. Is this right?
Yeah,
$1.1 billion.
The patents alone are probably worth more to Apple than anything. And to be fair, Apple is going to argue that you don't need to DVR or record anything. And I think in a world where logic and common sense prevail, that would be the case. But the reality is that right now, all of TV is a mess. And if they just had some DVR abilities, if only to catch the free air streams of stuff, it would be a value. And if I'm being honest,
but that conflicts with, and first of all, I'm going to vehemently agree with you. But it does very much conflict with what Apple wants things to be, which is where they're serving everything and you're able to stream everything from iCloud, from Apple's own servers, and that you're able to get it on demand.
Right. But Apple also wants to delight us, and it's done nothing but piss off most of the Mac users on the planet.
Agreed. That's why I'm saying we're going to vehemently agree on this, because so go ahead, please.
Anyway, it doesn't hurt to want, but there's more to it than that. If you've ever used the universal search on TiVo, it is so much better than the supposed great universal search they added on Apple TV with that TV app, which is, by the way, a user interface nightmare atrocity. Someone should be slapped a long time for that horrible product. And they, what's worse is they tortured poor Apple TV users as if they are not tortured enough as a group by making it the default thing that happens when you click. So now everyone had to go find the settings to disable that piece of garbage. But the universal search on TiVo shockingly works pretty good. And it is able to say, oh, the program you have, is available on these sources, and it's kind of smart in sucking in the cheapest, freest, most readily available one, whether it's on Amazon or if it's available for free via broadcast TV or something like that. It's surprisingly good. It could be much better, but there's such a low hurdle for decency in Apple in kind of the TV land that it still stands as probably the best UI out there.
Yeah, the funny thing, here's the funny thing about TiVo to me, and I'm not even sure this is as true today as it was 12 years ago. But when I first started using TiVo, and I've got a TiVo going right now with How It's Made. Do you like that show? How It's Made. I love that show. Couldn't get enough of How It's Made. But the thing when I first started using TiVo is that the interface felt very Apple-like, not from a look and feel standpoint, but from the standpoint that everything actually made sense. When I wanted to go do something with TiVo and I didn't know how to do it, I would do it the way I thought it should be, and then that would work. And it felt like these people got UI at a time when Apple was the only other company getting UI, and it was, the platform wars were Apple and Google, Apple and Microsoft for Windows. And it's still, I don't think it's as far ahead of every other piece of crap TV set box interface that's out there, but it is, to your point, it is still ahead of the other.
Well, and the search interface there is better. Their integration of other services is actually pretty crappy. Like if you want to use Netflix or Amazon on it, you're showing something good.
I am. I'm just going to say that this remote makes sense, and it still makes sense, and it's always made sense, and using it makes sense, and the buttons make sense, and the functionality makes sense, and everything works, and it even works on the other various third-party apps that you can use, like Netflix, Amazon, etc. And they get a lot of, in my opinion, they get a lot of kudos for this. When you compare this remote, this is a TiVo remote. When you compare this remote to the pieces of crap remote that come from every other, all the cable companies, at least I haven't used like a Roxio. Have you used Roxio?
I used it once. I wasn't a fan. The interface wasn't for me.
Haven't
Maybe
done much with Google Chrome either, or the Chrome TV either. But this is worth money. This is gold.
So I agree. They have a good remote. Apple would hate anything more than like 4 buttons, although they don't manage. They're also kind of tone deaf to everyone hating the current remote because no one can tell which side is up. But the interface has a lot of problems, and the company has a problem. TiVo does, in that I think the same guy that is responsible, the one guy with a red stapler that's responsible for updating iTunes, also moonlights and does all the work at TiVo, because there are still parts of the interface that are still in standard definition to this day, even on the newest TiVos. It's kind of shameful to put it shameful to put it mildly. There's also things like, I like the show that you talked about how it's made. So you can either do recordings of only new programs or new and old programs, right? So if you're trying to catch up, you record new and old programs. And, really high tech shit, like remembering that I watched this episode already, so don't re-record it 18,000 more times.
That should be the third option. Like new and old, but only ones I haven't seen.
Right, but you're talking about adding at least one more if-then statement in the code.
Yeah, you can't do that,
Brian. And
that's crazy.
In 2017, you need a committee. You need to think about it for a few more years. Anyway, the point is that I don't know that there's much talent left at TiVo, because I got a feeling that there's one dude doing updates on it, and he can only do so much, and it's the pace of improvement there has been glacial. That said, the universal search, the way that they worked there, the ability to still have a catch-all with a DVR for the cases when you need it. You might not need it that much, but for the few shows that you need it, you need it. And it's kind of like, I don't need 12 cores all the time, but every once in a while when I'm rendering video or whatever, and I don't want to wait, and the same thing with the tuner. If I can get some live stuff in an easy way without jerry-rigging some Rube Goldberg thing together with an Apple TV, if it was just there nice and easy, it's great. And it could be like a floppy drive in 3-4 years or 10-12 years, whenever you don't need those tuners anymore, well, you get rid of them. But in the meantime, it's very useful as a catch-all for those that need and like that thing. So that company probably costs 12 cents. It's so not valued at this point. Apple could buy it and just integrate some of those features straight into the Apple TV, like the universal search and some of the DVR abilities, and it would be a boon.
I'm assuming you have which one are you using?
I'm still using the Romeo, just because the Romeo Pro. Yeah, it has 6 tuners.
I've got the bottom. I've got the entry level Romeo, and it has issues with some of my one passes. I cannot get some of my one passes to work. Super annoying. But it could be actually just scheduling conflicts, and I just need a bigger Romeo.
That's part of it. Bolt. But it's part of it, but it's also, again, and we have to have another show about how the cloud is a lie. It's stuff that's going up top, and all of a sudden, season passes that I've had working for years, I look at it and it's got nothing for the new season listed as, even though the season pass is there, for whatever reason, it's not picking up the new episodes, and you basically have to kill the season pass and redo it again. And
I've had I cannot get Big Bang Theory. I've done it right. I know I did it right. I know I set it up right. I'm 100% chance. I'm 100% sure that I set it up right. And oh my goodness, I missed the whole last season of Doctor Who, but this season is suddenly recording.
Like I said, it's run by one dude with a red stapler.
I would still rather have it than a Comcast box.
That's what's crazy. It's true. Anyway, so those two companies, I think you could probably get them for like $1 billion. I mean, it wouldn't even be a round off error for a lunch bill for Apple. So it's such a nothing that, and it would really do a lot to round out those two services. Anyway,
I agree.
Well, not just services. I mean, the whole search engine thing, it would be transformative to the company if they had an internal version of that, and they would be smart to just, if they ever did this, if they launched their own search engine or bought one, to just call it beta for like 10 years, because it's going to suck compared to, Google. but just keep refining it. And it's something that just will put such a huge squeeze on Google alone for the pleasure of doing that. You know, Google shamelessly copied Apple's iOS and made a piece of shit variant that never gets updates to the vast majority of humanity, and leaves them subject to all kinds of horrible hacking and whatnot. And they did that shamelessly and not caring and undercutting Apple's legs with that. I think one good turn deserves another, and that would be a wonderfully, hugely karmatic payback as a bitch moment that I would watch with glee.
All right, fair enough.
All right, Tesla.
Yeah.
I think they should buy Tesla, and you're going to probably disagree with me on a number of counts. I think they should buy Tesla, not so much for the car making, although if they're still planning on making a car, it's hard to imagine something much more Apple-like than what Tesla's already done. And frankly, Elon has said on a number of occasions that, you know, Apple's been an influence, not about, you know, obviously the design of the car, because there is no Apple car, but just in general and kind of aesthetics and kind of forward thinking. There's a lot of things that would work there. But I think that it's an infrastructure play of a different sort. They're all about like producing, you know, solar now and huge batteries for your home, and cool. Those solar shingles are amazing. It helps with Apple's renewable green kind of policies in general. But if they're making a car, this is only if Apple's making a car. It's hard to imagine them doing worse than just buying this. Now, it's totally overpriced. Tesla at this point is worth more than GE. It's probably around 50 billion. What you'd be buying there are two things. One, just that kind of, if you're doing a car thing, you know, you're probably going to spend close to that amount over the time of getting things up and running anyway. But more, and you get a whole green energy solar play thrown in kind of as part of the bargain. But really, what I'd be excited for is buying Elon Musk. I would want him to become CEO. Tim Cook, I don't think, is doing a very good job. He's not doing a good job at focusing at the things that move things forward the most. And Elon Musk has an uncanny way, very similar to Steve Jobs, maybe better than Steve Jobs, in seeing what the next new thing is that's doable that everyone thought you can't do. And he certainly doesn't lack for courage in his kind of business sense. But I think that's a guy that could focus on, here's what the new Mac Pro should look like, or here's kind of how the Mac should evolve into something really great, and how mobile should evolve and how that could play in with the cars and stuff like that. He has this ability to put two things that don't naturally seem like they might coincide together and make them work together. And I don't think Apple has a vision guy anymore. I just don't think that person exists, and he could be that person. Which one more thing, if Apple bought Tesla, whatever it costs, 50 billion, the increase to both Apple stock and Tesla stock would basically pay for the cost of acquisition.
It would probably cost more like 70 billion to buy Tesla if it's currently priced at 50.
Right. Okay. Good point.
Whatever. But so here's the thing. I don't think Elon wants to make phones. I don't think he wants to make computers. I don't think he wants to make any of the things that you want him to actually fix at Apple. He's got other ideas. He wants to mine asteroids, and he wants to send people to Mars. And that's the thing, the sort of thing that he's focused on. That's the thing he's passionate about.
So you may well be right. I mean, I'm not going to pretend to know what's in Elon Musk's mind, but I'll give you one point.
I just did.
Well, you may know better. You may track him better than I do. I'll give you one counterpoint. Elon is still down in the weeds about things that matter. He has that same ability like Jobs, where he's a very big picture guy, but then all of a sudden he's like, why is that pixel not this way? Right. And in his car, he's like, the infotainment system, which, you know, at the time was kind of pretty innovative, is pretty crappy now, but on a lot of standards. Other than what's amazing is still it's a 17-inch center console stack, which is pretty cool, especially with the Google Maps live on there. But it's an old Linux thing. And at one point, he I guess it's been about 2 years ago now. He's like, you know what? I think we might want to do an app store for the car. And I think we might want to update the infrastructure to be more Android-y like, and maybe to run some Android apps in sandboxed virtual machines instead of Linux proper, because that's a bag of hurt, I guess, with regard to security. But he's still into improving that part of the experience. Now imagine what you could do if you owned the software stack, right? Imagine what you could do if you're making SpaceX and you own the tech, the fundamental operating system software tech that you could put in there. There's a lot of stuff that leverages off one another, where improving it on the Mac and on in a car may actually work to improve things in space, and vice versa. There's a the sum whole is greater than the parts kind of thing that happens there. So I don't know. You may be right. He may have zero interest, or he may be totally jazzed about improving all that stuff too. He wants to live in a better world. Ultimately, is, I think, if there's one constant theme I hear from his interviews, is he wants to live. He wants us to be a multi-planet species because we might kill each other, and we need to be able to do that to better ourselves. He wants artificial intelligence to augment us so that the robots don't kill us, so we can compete with them by augmenting ourselves. He wants to improve things, and I think having the muscle of an Apple would help him do that. What's that?
He also thinks we're living in a matrix.
Well, you know, it's hard to prove some of these things one way or the other, and I understand his theoretical argument there.
I do understand his theoretical argument. I believe that it's actually so very incredibly now-centered, but that's beside the point too. And I've also heard enough issues about working at Tesla that I'm not positive that really is going to be all that particularly beneficial for Apple.
Yeah, all those issues I take with huge grains of salt, and it's the same kind of baloney and smear things I hear about working at Apple. And one of the huge ones is, oh, by the way, if I hear the CEO, I think if it's Ford, every 2 days is interviewed about how Tesla is going to go under, and you know he's been doing that for about 7 years. At some point, does someone just start freaking laughing at this guy's face? Or maybe it was GM. You know, he's like, this model just doesn't work. I'm like, dude, he's bigger than GM. Something worked out. You know, if we listen to you, everyone that listened to you is just poorer for it. So go shut the hell up. So I don't believe everything I hear about that kind of stuff. And, you know, plenty of negative stuff about Steve Jobs as well.
I'm hearing some stuff firsthand about both companies, and neither company is perfect. I'm just not sure that Elon would be the perfect dream boss for Apple that you think he might be. And I truly don't think he gives a crap about all the things you would actually want him to fix.
You may be right. And
so my question is this: if that's true, because obviously that's just my opinion, but if that's true, would you still want him?
Well, not if he was going to do kind of what Steve Jobs said, you know. But again, this is one of Steve's, you know, he says one thing, does another kind of thing. The whole, if I were back at Apple, I would just milk the Macintosh and kill it and milk it until I came up with the next new thing. You know, that was his advice.
Didn't he do that?
I think people took him at his word there, and they were kind of trying to do it, and it's clear it's a mistake. I think he would have. I think he may do that, but I think he would also realize the iPad ain't it. iPad sales keep going down every freaking, you know, year after year.
How about that little thing called the iPhone?
It's not replacing it. Yeah, but that by itself, I think, is a thing that can go away overnight. Like I said, I've seen that when the creatives get out of the Mac, they dump the iPhone along with it, and they dump the ecosystem. Maybe creatives are unique. Maybe the average Joe won't do that. But I don't think he's so silly that he would have risked it, and he would still invest in it. And there's still very interesting things to be done on a bigger scale, on a home desktop scale with a computer. And if you can't think of something innovative, the problem isn't with the technology. The problem is with your lack of imagination. In my opinion. And so I think it's one of the many things where he says one thing because he feels a certain way at the time, and then he reassessed, he would have reassessed. But that's just speculation on my part, although there's a little bit of a history to back that. Anyway, I've avoided your question. Would I still take Elon Musk? No. I mean, obviously, if he says I don't give a crap about Apple, I'd bury the entire company and use all its money to fly to Mars. I'd be like, dude, I get it, but no.
He could do that too.
Yeah, just fly to Mars. Do your own thing. But if he were actually jazzed about it, that would be different. So
yeah, fair enough. If he was passionate about these products that I'm most interested in, I would be more interested in him as a CEO for Apple. I've always been pretty mad about this suggestion, just mainly because I don't think he cares. So I guess I got to flip that around. If I knew that he was in fact passionate about these very things, then yeah, he'd be interesting.
Would you say, beyond interesting, let's assume that he was sufficiently jazzed and you sincere that you believed him, right? Mm-hmm. That he wanted to do this. Would you, if you could, if it was up to Brian, kick out Cook and bring him in?
I'm the wrong person to ask that, because
you're the only other person on the podcast at the moment, so my choices are limited. Brian, work with me.
I'm the guy who wrote a letter in 1996 to Macworld magazine. This is before I started writing for. This is before Dave and I founded the Mac Observer. But I wrote this letter to Macworld magazine saying that we needed to give Gil Amelio a chance.
Wow, that's a hell of a track record. Although, in some sense, but for Gil, we wouldn't be here.
Well, and not only in hindsight, we know that Gil did a lot of Steve's dirty work. Steve very specifically had Gil axe projects and people left and right before he took over because he wanted it done by Gil instead of him. He
played Gil like hard. A fine fiddle. Yeah,
for sure.
But anyway, but nonetheless, Gil had the foresight to get next instead of be. Technologically speaking, I mean, I knew both what both systems were about. It wasn't close. I mean, it was a clearly right choice there. Bringing Jobs back also, despite it costing him his own neck, was the right move. It really was. And, if you ask people then, it was an insane move. I mean, Steve Jobs is known as, basically a lunatic. Yep. So bringing him back was no small leap of faith on his part, and it was the right call. He didn't see the other stuff that came with it, which maybe he should have, but nonetheless, I think that you could take a little bit of credit in being vindicated that helped the company.
He also did a lot of the reorganizations that he did even before Steve came back. Also, was instrumental in the company even being savable by Steve.
Yeah,
and he needs to get credit for that stuff, in my opinion. That said, the spirit of my letter to Macworld was probably not up to snuff. So I don't know that I'm the right guy to ask if I'd fire Tim. I am more sanguine about Tim's overall. I'm sanguine about Tim's bigger picture view than you are. More sanguine than you are. And but I mean, Elon is clearly a visionary, and Tim is not a visionary product guy. And Steve is the one who said that product companies need product guys in charge of it, and then he went and put an operations guy in charge of his own company. So,
do you think Jobs expected Cook to stay in power this long?
Yeah, I do, John. And not only that, I think that Tim might have been the only person, or perhaps less generously, the best person to transition Apple from Steve to non-Steve. Maybe
it's a folly to look for another visionary. Like you're never going to capture that lightning in the bottle.
If they put another like an Elon Musk, if Steve had been replaced by an Elon Musk, Elon or any new visionary like that is going to want to put their stamp on the company and completely remake it.
Maybe. I don't think that's a bad idea. Look what's going over at Microsoft. You know, they got someone that stopped wanting just to push a peanut up one more inch up the hill and said, no, let's redo things a good bit. He put his own stamp on things, but it's a much better stamp in my opinion.
Yeah, but he wasn't taken over from the visionary. He was taken over from Chucklehead.
Yeah, but it's the movement back to a more visionary kind of leader, and I think it's done Microsoft a lot of good.
Right. So what I'm saying is going from a visionary to visionary is going to, I think, is going to be more problematic than having a visionary turn around and come in and turn around a company that needs a vision.
Which is why I asked you, do you think that Jobs expected Cook to stay in that long? I think he needed him there for a transition, but at some point you think he's got to go, and someone that has vision has to come in. I think
that Steve would have told Tim that I want you to make this company be able to help make this company be able to survive me, and find someone to replace me. I think he would have told Tim that if that's what he wanted.
Yeah, well, you may be right. I think the other place that Tim has totally failed at is just to keep the trains running. Iterating things regularly has fallen off a cliff, and he should be the kind of guy that could keep those trains running, and I think he's failed at that.
I had an interesting thought put into my ear just yesterday about Apple and products and the lack of products that are shipping. That interesting thought, and I'm being circumspect in the way I present this, but the interesting thought that was put into my ear was, what if Apple has slowed down its rate of new products because they realized that things were shipping when they shouldn't be? That too many of the products needed more time, and that this schedule that we've seen is not so much letting things slip, but is instead a correction for making sure things are right. What if?
I think that would be an egregious mental and strategic mistake. Now, I kind of get where some of the spirit of that may make some more sense in that, look, iPads, I've been long saying, I think that the average keep time for an iPad is about 5 years. So instead of, it used to be for a desktop of 3 years, although I think desktops now have a longer shelf life. So, maybe it doesn't need to be updated quite as often, but you get into the problem of like, I don't care that, the average shelf life of a car or lifespan of a car these days is 7 years. When I buy one, I want it to be a new model. So I don't think there's any excuse for it. And I'm totally, there are two different types of product updates. There's the iterative one where it's such a no-brainer that they don't do it is, in my opinion, just shameful incompetence. Upgrading it from the 2.2 gigahertz part to the 2.4 gigahertz part when Intel makes it available is not so tough.
That's true.
You can keep most things the same, and just this is the next year model year. And then doing a major revamp like the latest MacBook Pro with the Touch Bar, yeah, those take time, and maybe you don't need to update those every 3 years like it used to be, and then you do it every 6 years, maybe. But in the meantime, the iteration should happen.
To your belabored point, I don't want to spend 2017 money on 2015 technology. And my counter to the little birdie who put this thought into my ear was, Apple has enough resources that if they felt that products were shipping when they weren't ready, they had the resources to fix that. And the solution isn't to slow things down. The solution is to get the right people in place to release products.
The solution is to have two types of tiers. Maybe the folks that do the iteration are on one team, and that's their job, and they go about doing those every year update cycles. And then the team that's responsible for reimagining something, they work.
It's the B team. You were the first to talk about the B team.
Yeah, let those folks go on and do their innovation, and that will be ready whenever it's ready. But I mean, they weren't doing any updates. I mean, there are huge gaps of time just in updating Mac. So anyway, I think it's a strategic mistake. Although I do agree, I don't think people update their iPads as often as they used to, or as often as a computer, and they just don't need to. So does that mean there's a different kind of cycle to it? Yeah, maybe for the iPad, but it
No,
doesn't
there's
hold
not,
for
because I
computers.
don't want to spend 2017 money on 2015 technology.
I agree with you. I agree with you. My point being is that if it's questionable whether or not that may apply to some areas like the iPad, I don't think it's terribly questionable, and I think it's clear that it doesn't apply to most all their other products. You know, maybe it applies to the Apple TV, right? Does that need to be updated every year?
Probably
Maybe,
not.
maybe
No.
not.
Because
I wouldn't
you know,
mind
Apple
it.
TV is not about the hardware, and it's never been about the hardware. That said,
Right.
Apple should be bloody well on top of having Apple TV support things like, you know, 4K or 1020p, and wait, not 1020p. Am I getting that wrong?
2160p.
1080. No, they were slow. Apple TV was doing 720p instead of 1080.
Oh, right.
1080p, is it P?
Yes.
Am
Yeah.
I still getting, okay, all right, thank you. And I mean, very, very slow on that, and they've been very slow to support 4K, and then, you know, and then there's bigger stuff coming down the line. So from that standpoint, yeah, things need to be updated. Apple TV does need to be updated.
Right, and so that's not even a, you know, whether it's a year to year, they're clearly behind on core technologies there that just make them look laughable and embarrassing. It's embarrassing what they're doing there. So anyway, I get it. You know, fair-minded people can disagree, but I disagree. Anyway, I think we've beaten that horse. We're gonna have to cram a bunch of topics real quick. So topic number, unless you got something else.
No, go.
Topic number 2, some new products that are kind of gotten some attention from the tech punditry, which is always a mixed bag because frankly, most of the tech punditry is terrible and stupid and whatever. There's 2 products or 2 or 3 products there that I think are interesting. And I think that you and Jeff have disagreed on a number of occasions with some of them. But for me, the one that's gotten, I think, the most attention, and I think deservedly so, is the Microsoft Surface Studio and the Microsoft Studio Book. I think one is easy to deal with because it's just such a financial success and a success in education and business that, and Google Chromebook, I guess, is the other part of it. But Surface books and just Surface tablets, they're basically just a regular Windows laptop PC without a keyboard, or in the case of a book, it comes with a little dock keyboard that also has a video coprocessor, which is kind of neat, a dedicated one there. But it's Windows 10, and you have some touchability to it. And the Surface Studio is a big 28-inch piece of hardware, and it's lovely, the hardware. And I think it does something that Jeff doesn't give it credit for. And although I agree with Jeff's assessment of the product that it's basically shit, it's shit that came this close to hitting Apple in the heart as a competitor, I think, to the Mac. And
well, why do you think? Here's why do you think Apple has stuck to its guns on the no toaster fridge? Because this wasn't that wasn't a capricious decision, right? Apple doesn't make capricious decisions along these lines. So it wasn't capricious. It wasn't. It was founded on someone's strong opinion, and I imagine it was also decided after much discussion. So my question is, why? What do they know that we don't?
I think they know that they don't have the software side to this solved. Microsoft has done something big. They haven't solved the software side, which is huge. They've solved the hardware part of it. Apple's argument, I remember Steve Jobs went over this, and it's such, now knowing what we know about the Surface Studio, a retardedly stupid argument, which is, he's like, nobody wants to put their hand up and move it on a vertical screen for a long time. Well, okay, first of all, duh. Secondly, that doesn't stop kids from constantly, going towards a vertical surface because they expect it to be touch. But yeah, you wouldn't use that all day. But it just doesn't hold true on a tablet that you hold in your hand. Like the Surface, when you flip it over and use it like a convertible tablet, it's not vertical. It's like a blotter on your desk, which has been successfully written on and used as a working surface for centuries. And the pivot ability of the Surface Studio makes it comfortable to actually work on. It's very comfortable as a hardware solution. Now, unfortunately, pivoting it doesn't magically transform Windows 10 into being a nice and usable operating system. It's still an atrocious piece of shit. And they're trying to evolve the software to make it make more sense when you do pivot it down, but it doesn't work, at least for me. And from a usability standpoint, because the software is still so stinky, it's awful. But they did solve the hardware part of this thing, which is just let the big screen go vertical. Use it like a blotter, and you can start to do interesting things where there is no fatigue because you're not holding your hand up there. That argument just doesn't.
Well, yeah. When you're using a large surface-like surface as a drafting table in drafting table mode, there's massive potential, and we do in fact have centuries of work like that. And the reason why we do is because it actually works and it makes sense.
Right. There's literally drafting tables at the same angles, right? And so Apple is being totally disingenuous when they're saying, we've looked at that and it didn't work. Well, last time you looked at that, you were telling us this bullshit argument about vertical thing, which, okay, we all agree with, but that's not the point of what's going on the Surface. The problem is, what does the operating system look like? And I think John Morello had a great talk, and I agreed with him over, I think it was Jeff and others that were telling, and I think it was Kelly, we're telling him how wrong he is about touch. And he's totally right. Touch is going to come. This is not, I predict, it's not a question of if touch will come to desktops and laptops and stuff on the Mac and on computers in general. It's just a question of when and who gets the recipe right first. Now, Microsoft may have solved the desktop version of the hardware problem, but the operating system is still a mess with regard to daily usability. It's just terrible. And Jeff is right. If you're using it as desktop, you end up wanting just to put it upright and use it as a regular machine, maybe with the exception of drawing. Although the stylus is a bit laggy compared to an Apple Pencil, whatever. But the actual drafting on it is perfectly fine. Leo Laporte, on all his podcasts, he uses a giant Surface Studio daily. And he does a lot of podcasts, right, where he just uses it and people zoom in on him moving around and he circles things as he's doing the podcast and whatnot. And it works incredibly fluidly and naturally. A very limited use case, but it shows, and he's not fatigued, right? It shows promise from a hardware side. I don't think Apple has a software solution, so they're just crapping on this, and they're going to continue crapping on it until they figure out, does a 28-inch touch screen, is that more of an iPad that has little flourishes of the Mac that come to it, or is it more of a Mac that has some flourishes of an iPad that comes to it, or is it some new sui generis environment like they created wholesale for the iPhone when it first came out? And I don't know what the answer to that is. I don't know who's going to get the right recipe, but I do think Microsoft deserves credit, and they solved one of two major parts of this problem, which is that pivot. As simple as that seems, they came up with a really nice design where physically they've solved a major problem. Now the software ain't there, but they deserve credit for that. And Microsoft and Apple, I hope that their blather on this is just blather, that they're actually trying to bridge these. If they're not, if they're genuine about this is a case where, again, they're just completely visionless. That I don't think they're seeing this convergence. It's going to happen. All surfaces everywhere are going to have both touch and other input devices to help professionals do real work, something the iPad currently doesn't allow you to do. It's one of the reasons why Surface Books are more successful, and definitely Chromebooks are more successful in education than iPads.
You done now?
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Note that Tim hasn't actually badmouthed a toaster fridge in about 18 months, and neither has anybody else.
Yeah, and I don't know if that's just because they haven't gotten around to the topic, or because it might draw some attention to how little they've updated anything, or maybe there's a change in philosophy, or there's some new major thing coming through. Who knows?
You know, Tim's formula for these sorts of things is usually to denigrate the product but not the need, to denigrate the competitor but not the competing product, but not the need that product is trying to serve. And we haven't had any kinds of denigration like that in a while. Same thing with the wearable computing interface. We haven't heard any denigration of that for a while.
Yeah, so I leave the Kremen-like reading of tea leaves of Tim Cook's
Cook code
utterings to professionals such as yourself, but I think those two products deserve some praise for advancing the art a bit. They still have problems. I wouldn't use them on a daily basis, but I think they do advance the art, and for some people, they're going to be good solutions.
Well, I've got one more note on this that is where Apple doesn't have a lot of credibility with me, and that's Steve Jobs' bullshit about we've got 10 styluses on the ends of our hands, and so we don't need a stylist. And
right.
To which I say that's great if you're Miro, but it's not so great if you're Picasso. And it just infuriates me. It infuriates me. Like the principle of having a touch interface work where you don't need a stylus, great. I love that. I worship it. But pretending that we don't, pulling them out of the Apple store, that freaking pisses me off still. And it lowers Apple's credibility on such things as the toaster fridge.
Agreed. And one other pile of baloney that I heard during the podcast where John how do you pronounce his name?
Martellaro.
Martellaro. I apologize to John Martellaro. Was right, where they were talking. I think Jeff was saying, well, maybe that you need time for something to work its way into business to become successful. It took a long time for the Apple II to work its way into business. I'm like, first of all, not really. VisiCalc didn't come out that far after the Apple II was announced. But secondly, it's been 7 freaking years.
Yep.
I mean, it's not a new product. It's 7 years old. So they couldn't figure out how to get a file system on this thing to let professionals that need that kind of thing. And all they have to do is that, and add the ability for a mouse or a trackpad type device for more fine-tuned controls. Because as it turns out, I agree exactly with what you said. Maybe for general input, your fingers are great. And maybe it's great that they started that way to force everyone to think of it that way. But for more exacting work, if you're doing coding, you need like a trackpad or a mouse to get things and grab things, like slicing and dicing like with a scalpel. And other
keyboard that doesn't get in your way.
And other times you might need a stylus when you're an artist or something like that. You need different tools for different types of work still. And to ignore those is just to be tone deaf, stupid, and or just really unresponsive to how things are going, particularly if you're trying to make the iPad be the new replacement to the Mac or something like that. So I agree with John. There's no excuse for 7 years not being able to do what are the rudiments of computing elsewhere on older systems. I just don't think they want to. I think they have a philosophical issue, and now they've painted themselves into a philosophical corner with it. Much like they painted themselves into a quote unquote thermal corner with the Mac Pro. It wasn't a thermal corner, it was a philosophical corner where they chose style over substance and function there, and they got screwed by it and they deserve the ridicule and punishment for it. And I think they are running the danger of doing making the same philosophical mistake with the iPad and not advancing it and keeping these artificial barriers between the two that stop people from getting work done. But anyway, that's another rant for another day, I suppose, although I fit it in. So there we go. One other product, and it ties into our last topic. We're running a little late, but I think we'll get it in a few minutes, is, because I don't think we're going to have a lot of disagreement on this, is the Amazon Echo. I think Amazon deserves credit, and it's been deserves credit because it is a new type of product. It's a new type of thing, and there is something different about having a known agent in your home, where you don't have to worry where's the phone, even though you could ask for Siri to do something for you on your phone. There's something good about it being centralized. But as kind of mentioned earlier, Amazon's one of those companies where I love the services, but I hate the company because they ultimately don't care about you.
Well, they do care about us. They don't care about their vendors, and that bothers me from the standpoint that I actually want good stuff. And Amazon's entire goal is to suck all the profit out of every industry that they touch, kind of like Walmart. And the end result is that quality goes out the window, and that is bothersome to me. I like quality things.
I think that's part of it. I think that they don't necessarily treat all their employees great, and they're looking forward to replacing them with robots any minute. But in the meantime, treating worse than a robot would be treated. And I also don't think that they value your privacy all that much as well. But whatever. The point being is, they deserve credit for advancing the art. The home integration stuff that works with the Amazon Echo is far ahead of Apple, who this should be much more in their wheelhouse than it is in Amazon's wheelhouse, yet they've done more with less there. So there's a rumor that came out, I think 9 to 5 had was
BGR.
Quoting, I'm sorry, BGR was quoting some analyst that says that looks like Apple might actually be working on an Amazon Echo competitor, to which I say, please, because they're the only company I would trust with my privacy in home.
Exactly. That's the thing. Man. I want Apple. All right. So first of all, HomeKit. I want HomeKit automation or no automation because the rest of the world is not focused on security or privacy. And both of those are to me tremendous issues about what we have in our homes. From a making things work, for having a device that is a wiretap that is sitting in my home. I got that from you, but it's sitting in my home listening to everything I say. Or goodness, now we can stick a camera in our closet too, because I need Amazon watching everything I do too.
Yeah, that will never go wrong. I'm sure no one will ever hack that information from the cloud.
No, never at all. And Apple is the company I trust to listen in on me, and Apple is the company I would trust to watch me if that was the case. Apple is the only platform provider that is dedicated to the principle of protecting your privacy while offering services. So yeah, please, where is the Alexa competitor? But so the story actually comes from Sonny Dixon, who tweeted something along the lines of, and I quote, "Apple is currently finalizing designs for their Alexa competitor, expected to be marketed as a Siri AirPlay device." I guess Mr. Dixon has said some other things in the past that have turned out to be true.
I wish they would combine that with an airport and maybe like a little home server kind of thing, because that's another product that's gotten a lot of traction and again deserves some credit, like the Eero. I disagree with Dave's. Dave did a great review of all these mesh networks and whatnot, but where I disagree is I have a real problem with my Eero being controlled by a cloud service where they have access to everything I've ever served. You saw this uproar about, I think rightly, about the FCC now allowing everyone to sell all your traffic from your ISP. But yeah, again, even if Eero are saints and they don't care about what places you visit, again, it's only a matter of time before they're hacked and that information comes
or they're purchased by someone who does.
Right. And that's always the problem with the cloud. And I have a huge problem with the cloud managing something so sensitive that again, it's just a matter of time before, for one reason or the other, that stuff gets out. But that's another area where Apple could do some good. And just like I was decrying this whole notion of like, don't make Apple not making monitors. And there were so many apologists saying, oh, that's okay, that, they can concentrate on other things. Like, there was no excuse for it. I don't think there's any excuse from them getting out of the Wi-Fi game. if only for one feature alone, too. Anyone that uses Back to My Mac, the fact that the Apple Airport router gets those credentials and can do forwarding back and forth so you can get to your Mac at any time, that's a feature that no other router has. And not to mention, I wouldn't trust any other router with my iTunes password to do that stuff. So, you know, people are a little too glib and a little too quick to let Apple off the hook. And when you let Apple off the hook, they will do bad things or not update things for a long time. People need to be a little bit more self-thinking about these things. And there's no excuse for Apple to get out of this. There are things that they can do to advance the art that others like Eero have done and do it in a good way. So I think that's another company that deserves some praise, although I don't like their model of there are better ways to do this than cloud management, where all my surfing becomes, you know, potentially a Russian hacker's fruits. And it's not like anyone cares about me, because frankly it's boring, but what happens is the odds of any one of us individually being hacked is very low. And if someone wants to hack us, frankly, they're going to hack us because hackers can do that. They don't care. That's low-hanging fruit. What they usually are looking for is a big score, and that's why they love cloud plays where they can hack all of Yahoo and get millions of credentials, right? That is the kind of score, and that's where you're much more likely to get your stuff stolen from, is when you use these kinds of online services. It's, again, just a question of when, not if, because they all seemingly get hacked, and what's worse is they get hacked and don't tell us till it's way too late or never. And that makes us even less secure. At least when you're hacked, you probably have a good chance of knowing that it happened if things go wrong. But anyway, those were some of the products going by. You want to do a couple of quick shot fire questions from viewer mail?
Sure, let's do it.
All right. One came from where is this? One came from Rick Allen, who had a pretty nice long email, but he scolded. Well, he didn't scold, but he was being nice. But he did mention one thing that we didn't talk about in our Star Wars thing, which was the CGI graphics of several of the characters. And he mentioned that, you know, he went with his girlfriend and she didn't notice, but he did, and it didn't kind of work for him. I agree. I think the tech is clearly advanced, but the CGI of, I forget, it was like that general dude in a young version of Leia at the end of Rogue One, where it was just still in the uncanny valley for me. I saw it right away, and I wondered, I get why you might need to use this, but I thought like maybe you should put the characters further away and in dark shadow, so it makes it a little less noticeable that they're creepy CGI. And
I thought that
you don't need to have them as really. So you just thought it was natural. You didn't have any creep factor from it.
No, I didn't have any creep factor. No, I thought
so,
it was
and you didn't even notice. You didn't notice it.
I did not know ahead of time that that's what they were doing, and I found it very, very interesting.
So that's cool. I didn't know that they were doing it either. I just was watching the movie and I noticed it right away. I'm like, oh, that's creepy to me. Like, it just seemed artificial. Again, I give them credit because they did advance the art.
Something felt off, but it didn't feel off in a catastrophic way to me. Not like when Legolas is on the back of the troll in the Lord of the Rings, and it looks terrible. It looks like a very bad video game, and it doesn't look in any way natural whatsoever. That really bothered me.
Yeah. So, well, it's interesting that you felt that something was off. So different people are going to have different reactions. My girlfriend also, I don't think she noticed or cared and was fine. But I just thought there was a lot of like close-up shots and whatnot that if you did it as a still, it would have been fine. But when that general dude was talking, I forget his name, he just looked like the land of the living dead, and if they've pushed them back in distance a little bit, it wouldn't have been as noticeable. But anyway, that's one. So this is what's weird. I hate that Steven Spielberg and Lucas went back and redid CGI for their movies. You know, the whole who shot Greedo first thing, and they recut that, and they made some Jabba the Hutt and Yoda in CGI. But this is an area, since it's already CGI, if they recut Rogue One 10 years from now, when that tech is way better, I won't be against it, assuming they don't change the plot line, like, who shot Greedo first kind of thing. Where I could see if they rework that, it might be better in the future.
Yeah, all right. Fair enough. Next.
All right, and the next is shotgun questions to us from Grant, and he asked us a few things. So, Apple design team has been busy. MacBook Pro and pre-iPhone tech bar to the exclusion of the iPad Pro and iMac updates. Discuss. I think we kind of yelled at how shitty Apple does, or at least I did, at how shitty Apple design was in the last episode, and they haven't been doing anything. So yeah, see the last episode, they haven't been doing shit. And if all the entire team can do in years and years is make a MacBook Pro, shame on them. The exclusion of the iPad Pro, why that's slower? I mean, it's a fair question, as are all their other delays. Fair question. So I don't have any. I've already shot so much vitriol at them being shitty and producing things with the design team that I've kind of exhausted myself there. I don't know if you got anything on that.
No, I've definitely exhausted all of us ranting about this very topic.
Okay. The Verge is owned by a major investor in Lyft. Ignore all the negative reports. I think he's being somewhat sarcastic. Everyone freely admits all corporations.
I don't think so.
Shit.
I think he's actually saying that that the Verge is artificially against Uber.
Right. Right. Everyone freely admits all this. All corporations do this shit. This week's scandals were 3 years old news because they've run out of bad things to say to tilt users to Lyft. Discuss. So yeah, I think the notion that a bunch of the press has misguided loyalties or bad abilities to do analysis is something I'm totally on board with. I
yeah,
agree.
that may be the case, but Uber is a piece of crap company and with a piece of crap culture, and they do make terrible decisions. They treat employees and consumers alike terribly. They're predatory. They're misogynistic. I hate that company. Hate the company.
I love their service, but I agree with everything you just said. But I think he makes a good point when a news outlet is also a major investor into a company, and then they have stories coming out towards the competitors that it's somewhat suspect. I agree. Leo Laporte told over 1 million listeners on the Tech Guy radio show that Apple is getting out of computers. Leave now. Perhaps he should leave now. Discuss. So on the one hand, I like wrong. Leo. Who's wrong?
Leo's wrong. Apple's not getting out of computers.
Yeah, Leo's wrong. But I mean, to be fair, Leo does about 18,000 podcasts a minute. So he may be looking for content to say, and he may have loose lips at any given minute just because he's doing so many shows. But anyway, I agree with you that they're not getting out of computers. I also think that Leo should probably stop doing himself, and maybe Andy Ihnatko also should stop doing podcasts about the Mac. They use Android stuff all the time. They really don't use the Mac anymore. I find it almost borderline offensive that they're on Mac Break Weekly and basically hawking Android and whatever stuff, because I don't mind criticism, but to me, the criticism is a lot more meaningful from someone that uses the stuff all the time. And I don't mean because they get to review it or whatnot. They've clearly made their choice. And frankly, the fact that they recommend Android for anything for most people when the vast majority of those devices don't get updated, I think is pundit malpractice. So I have, at the very least, a waggy finger towards both of them. And at times, I just think that they should let others that like the Mac and use the Mac bitch about the problems with the Mac. And that they've kind of chosen a different bed to lay in, and let them give analysis on that. Last one. Oh, nope, that was the last one. The rest was nice compliments. So thank you very much, Grant.
Yep, he was very, very kind. And there you have it.
An event-filled show once more. And,
yes, let's call it that.
Time to say goodbye. Goodbye, 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 goodbye.
There's a song there somewhere
that I shouldn't be singing. All right, Brian, thank you so much.
Yep, thanks for another week, and have a good weekend. What is this, Thursday? You can have a good Friday first.
Sounds good. And to everyone else, thanks for joining us on that popular topic, and we'll see you next week.